does not deplete. It stays in the water and it's intergenerational. So if children intake mercury or women of childbearing age take in mercury, it will affect the development of the child. So it never leaves your body, it stays in your brain and it impacts your learning abilities. And it can be very, very harmful even for your future generations. So uranium is kind of a hard thing to address in a human rights type of world because it essentially, the impacts of uranium takes decades, but mercury, the impacts are almost instant. So we were thinking that maybe if we could see and kind of provide a snapshot or just some type of information and identify where mercury was coming from, we could hopefully contribute to the larger picture, you know, of getting our waters healthier and obtaining our sacred sites back. So that study, what they did was they tested that 2020 report that I had access to was the foundation or the inspiration of this project. What they did was they went across the state of South Dakota and they on the reservation by the Missouri River, and they took tests of what was in the water, uranium, mercury. And so here's just a map of all of the sites that they tested. All right, so I was a little bit nervous at the beginning. I feel like I'm better now. But I really wanted to talk about how important it is to invest in youth. Sorry, I'm emotional because I saw the impact of how powerful it was just to give people an opportunity. Sorry, I need a second. So I didn't expect that either. All right. So what we did was we sent a flyer out across the reservation. We utilized OLC's, you know, email networks, and I got a response from about 5 or so students who were really interested in wanting to test water. So what we did was we recruited them, we trained them we wanted to base it in our human rights, and so we did that. We also wanted to tell them what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, how you were going to collect the samples, how important it was to do that. And then we went out and did it. So there was a big group of us. What we did was we just did it. We went, we made our plans, we talked about it, and we went across the Black Hills and took all the sampling that we needed. So the study was the start of understanding what climate change and how it will impact our people, because what we wanted to look at was the current content of mercury and uranium in the water, the current content in the soils and the sediments. And the hope was to be able to create a picture of what's the current impact, what's the historical impact of mining, and what would be the future impact with climate change. So we know that we're going to experience more extreme weather events. So we're able to identify the loads and how that will travel downstream. So that's why we wanted to look at the sedimentology and stratigraphy of those areas and the sites that we went to. Dr. Hannon was an expert on that, and we had to draw a bunch of things in our notebooks. But it was really cool to go out there and work with young people who are my age, who are, you know, have similar goals and aspirations. So here, I think on the right, we have a picture of all of the areas that we went to. And then you have a picture of 2 young Oglala Lakota women who are doing the sampling. They were really into it. Some of them fell in the water. We had to climb bridges. But the reason why we had to climb and we had to kind of be, I guess, stealthy was because we had to avoid private lands. And so we had to stay near the highways to get these samples. And so one thing that I really hope for in the future is that we could take samples everywhere on Oceti Sakowin land, that there are no barriers, that we do not have to worry about those legal issues, and we can continue to depict the picture of how Unchimaka is doing and how that is going to impact our people. So here is just some numbers that we got in the first sampling. So what we did is we took samples from the springtime/summertime, and then we also returned 2 seasons later in the wintertime and took more samples. And the purpose of that was to understand what the differences would be when the water tables were higher and when they were lower. And it's an interesting thing what we ended up coming up to at the end of the study. So here, the green, you'll just see that there was no water. And when I was taking the students, I said, that's a violation of our rights because our water, the flow of our rivers are destroyed. We can't even take samples there. There's no more rivers. So these are 4 locations that are actually dry during the winter time. And so Whitewood Creek, we weren't able to take samples in the sediment, but in the second study, there's a high indication of mining, and I'll show you how. So this map here, all of the sites that we see in red are where the levels are reaching the EPA limit, which is set by the US government. But 20 years ago, it was a lot less. And today, they raised those standards to accommodate their continued mining. So at the bottom, we see Cheyenne River, and it had the highest levels of uranium and many other contaminants, lead, mercury. And so that's something that we really need to look at more in depth. So the spring water testing, this is just a snapshot of the water testing. What we see here is higher levels of arsenic and lead and uranium. Of course, that would be in Cheyenne River. But there's other locations such as Whitewood Creek that shows higher levels of lead, arsenic, and silver. And silver is really it discolors your skin. And there are other health implications from that. But with the data in the second study in the springtime, basically the water was all flushed out. So it appeared to be, there are less contaminants in the water, which was really interesting. We'd have to look at the actual dynamics of the flow of the rivers and where those loads are going and how they travel downstream. So again, there's high arsenic in the Cheyenne River. This replicates other studies that we were looking at, especially the 2020 report. And then there are, Whitewood Creek here is also high in mercury. So again, these are all just snapshots of where it was at that certain time. It's hard to make a conclusion of exactly what's happening until we get more data and more information. But that's where it's really important to continue this type of studying, because the goal of the study was to get a publication and get all of those OLC youth to be published, because you're building their careers, you're investing in them, you're training them, and you're showing them, this is how you can protect your rights. When you know information, you can make better and stronger decisions. So in the future, in our study that we're doing right now, we're working on publishing it. We are completing that story of the flood history, and we are also doing a flood risk and health risk assessment. And so what are the implications of those contaminants in the water? Again, the outcomes were training students, which was really important, and then having them reflect on what they learned and how that is related to their studies. Some of them actually got hired at our partnering nonprofits, which I thought was really awesome, how it opened more doors, and now they're really invested in this work. We taught them how to write public comments, so to intervene, because if you're not present in these rooms, they'll continue to make decisions without us. And then now we have 2 works in progress of writing. One is going to be focused on how this was a community-based, Indigenous youth-led approach to addressing global health and planetary issues. And then the other one is getting a more scientific publication with the data and the set etymology and all of that. So one of the things I forgot to mention, because I was so nervous, was that I'm also a UN North American focal point for the UN Indigenous Youth Caucus. I'm also an alternate board member for the International Indian Treaty Council. And so I get sent to places across the world to talk about this research, to talk about our rights, our treaty rights, and to talk about how rights-based approaches and treaty-based rights approaches are a solution to climate change and global health, and how this will make our research better. A lot of the, I guess, the world's leaders, I gathered in Bonn, Germany, at the Chemicals and Waste Management, where we worked on a youth declaration where we understood that policy impacts our science and our science impacts our policy. And so this is, I believe, to them it was new, to us it was not new, but they're trying to base a lot of their research and a lot of their interventions in human rights, because they're starting to realize that we can't have a better future unless we address, the needs of humans. And, indigenous peoples are going to take that further and include animal nations and plant nations in that fight, especially because it's already reaffirmed by the UN Declaration. Yeah, so I presented this research all across the world. I didn't cry. I'm very professional. But I guess it's just like the people that makes me nervous. But yeah, it's really impactful, because we trained, I integrate this work in the courses that I teach. I'm an adjunct instructor for environment and peoples. I teach pre-engineering. And so a lot of my work is relating human rights, our identity, the Lakota language, all to research, and using that to strengthen our advocacy internationally, and kind of, not to be rude, but ignore, IRA constraints and ignore those political constraints that exist by just doing it and not making any excuses. So I'm really proud of the youth that we invested in. There's a few of them here. I want to thank Honor the Earth for investing into Oglala youth to be here. They funded them to be here, and they're over there. I don't want to make them, nervous, but I'm really proud of them, because they, when I asked them, there was like no hesitancy. They wanted to be here, and I figured that I don't want to wait till I get ihuni, get somewhere. I want to do it now and start braiding them into the work that we do now. And so that's it. I'll take any questions.
We have any questions for Ampo? Yeah, go ahead, Tumi. You could please identify yourself. Someone help her. You gotta push the button. Maybe battery's dead for that one. We got one more question after this too. If anybody has a question, raise your hand.
I'm sorry. My name is Beverly Running Bear, and my question is, did you guys do a study on Angostura?
We did not, but we really hope to, because we've been getting a lot of tips that needs to be done.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next question. There we go.
Hi. Okay. My name is Stephanie Little Hawk Bicrow. Thank you very much, Ampo. I really appreciate all of your work and just dedication to looking at the external variables that continue to contribute to the contamination and the quality of life for our people. Have you reached out to any of the Indigenous and non-Indigenous research organizations that, like say Dr. Jeff Henderson, Marsha O'Leary, those individuals who have for many years received millions of dollars to conduct research in earth sciences, air pollution, quality control, and we look at the levels of mercury within, especially like the Kyle area, in relation to the, the high stillborn numbers that we're seeing over the last 20 years. There's a lot of data that's captured there, as well as obviously our own tribal college that has really been phenomenal in leading these areas of, unknown sciences that we know are contributing to this very topic. And if you have, what has been the outcome?
I have not. That is my short answer. I have not known about those resources, but I look forward to learning about them from you and forwarding them on to my young friends. And thank you.
Okay, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Lexi. Last question here. Lexi Bill. Oh, here we go.
Would you repeat the name of the study you did? I think, you mentioned a study before that included some of the Pine Ridge water sources. Could you mention that? And then I got a question regarding that.
Yes. This study is called the Black Hills Water Testing Project.
The Black Hills
Water Testing Project.
Okay. Now that's what was the date of that? Do you know?
Well, we've concluded it this June. We started it a year prior. So it's been almost about a year since we've done that.
Okay. The reason I asked that is because we have an environmental department on the reservation, and it seems like they've been resistant, which may be, should I say, understatement, to various studies that have been done historically on Pine Ridge water. And I'm talking about everything from the pipeline from the Missouri to the drinking water in Pine Ridge. And so I'm wondering, did you have a chance to look at some of that data from that study regarding those areas on the reservation, or did you just use part of it? Or the reason I'm asking that is because people need to know what they're drinking. And so my question has to do with the use of water in the high populated villages or districts or communities of the res, so that people will have access to the information. So is there any place that you know of, or maybe I shouldn't say you know of, is there places that have been documented to have dangerous levels of mercury and other contaminants, to your knowledge?
I would say besides that 2020 report, no. And I think that's one of the bigger issues is we need to do more testing on and off the reservation.
Thank you.
Okay.
I got a question. Can I speak? Yes. Yes, I have questions. Well, more of from what I found out too, because I was just meeting with IHS today, and these are some of the questions I was bringing up, water issues. Because I know we have a mini Wachoni project, and I was with tribal leaders, and we were meeting with IHS, and we were asking all these questions. And according to them, they do, because I was concerned, just what Mr. Means over here was saying. I was concerned about those issues because they come into my office all the time. So I was wondering, I know I caught some engineers from IHS and asked them the same thing. Yes, they do water testing and water samples and whatnot. But so I said, well, what about so we got a water system that comes in People are reporting that maybe it might be contaminated. Do you guys do testing on that? Yes, we do. Okay, what about the wells? Not everybody's on the water system, rural water. What about the wells? Are you guys testing those? And have you tested them? To a point, yes. So a lot of questions were asked on water, and according to IHS, there was nothing found. So I said, "Hey, okay, so, and when I was in, I was at a COLT meeting, Coalition of Large Tribes. And there was a contractor there, and I was asking about if they do samples like that, because there's a big contractor. So we got their information because, me, personally, I always like to have a backup. So I'd like to do some more studies myself, just to satisfy that second guess there. So maybe we will reach out to you.
Great. It's starting a water business. Just kidding.
Yes. So thank you. Thank you for that information.
Thank you everyone for your time. And I forgot to say this at the beginning, but I ask all my elders and everyone in front of me to forgive me for speaking in front of you.
Oh, thank you, Apo. Thank you for the good work and the good research. We appreciate it. And continue doing the good work and doing what you're doing. Thank you. Next up on our agenda, Alicia Swimmer, research. Just wanted to remind our presenters here that if you could stick around when we're done, we want to honor you. And we may go a little bit past our agenda here. We're catching up slowly, but we were behind. So just be mindful of that. Let's do it.
Han Madakiapi, Alicia Swimmer, Machiapi Show, Mini Luzahan, Imantahan. I always say I'm from Rapid City because I'm born and raised here, but I also grew up in Rosebud, like my grandma and grandpa are from P Dog, back at South Wilkes-Barre, Caroline Plumman. And on my dad's side, my grandpa Benjamin Swimmer is from Parmalee area, and my grandma's from Manderson. Her name's Alice Crazy Ghost. I'm currently a master's student of Indigenous Studies at the University of Kansas. I chose this field because it's multidisciplinary and I focus more on the treaties. So I would like to talk about the mini Shoshe. And just to go over my research interests, like I'm into confirming the rights, not only us as Oceti Sakowin, but like all the animals and plant relatives that we have. I think that's important that people recognize that. And we have our traditional laws of our people, which I think helped us live in harmony before colonization and Western expansion. So I always like to share these pictures when I present anywhere, like at the University of Kansas where I go to school, just to represent our people. A lot of people like to do land acknowledgements, but not enough people do buffalo acknowledgements. So I always include that because those were, we followed the buffalo everywhere. Everywhere they went, we went, and the animals follow us and them, and it's just a cycle. And a lot of people are familiar with Mount Rushmore. I always tell them like that's where I'm from because that's what white people identify, you know, their American dream with. And that's the picture I always show them with their eyes crossed out because they don't see us, I guess. And I always share this too because like Anpo was saying, like we need to get outside of the IRA tribe stuff. I think that's really limiting, especially our power and us trying to do research. Like I could go to all these tribes, but like I can enroll with Oglala, but I'm enrolled with Rosebud just because of my grandma. So I'm 4/4 or whatever that means. And I don't know, I'm just with Rosebud because that's where my mom and dad enrolled me at. And I just wanted to include the copy of Article 2 of the 1868 treaty. This is because what I'm focusing on is our eastern border, which says it's the eastern bank of the Missouri River. And I think that's interesting. I had this conversation with my Uncle Nick because we made our border the river, which always changed, especially in the spring. You would have this Missouri River before the Flood Control Act. They put all these dams up, and we were able to go there after the spring thaw and look at our plants, like our crops there. And I think that's important that we realize what it says in there, you know, commencing on the east bank of the Missouri River. So it doesn't say Western Bank because when you look at a lot of the stuff that I'm gonna talk about, they're just talking about land. And what defines land? Because the Missouri River would be underwater part of the year. I mean, the areas that are now permanently flooded, they weren't permanently flooded before these dams. And there's the Missouri River naturally meandering, as we can see how high the banks are. It doesn't look like that anymore because they flooded it in some of these areas. So I wanted to focus a lot more research on reintroducing our traditional practices to help restore this river and improve reservation life, because we don't have access to a lot of our foods that we used to have. A lot of our bands are like the Cheyenne River Sioux tribe. They're the ones that did a lot of the planting and stuff and took care of that for us. And then me being Southern Lakota, we like buffalo hunters and more nomadic lifestyle, but we all had our economy and we all worked with each other. And I think it's important that the inclusion of indigenous knowledge is important when they make federal Indian policy, because a lot of us didn't have a say. Like we don't have a congressional delegate. Cherokee Nation has that written into their treaty. They're still fighting for that seat right now. But us guys, we don't have that. So we have to rely on senators and representatives, and they have to be from where our state is. I just want to include some pictures of some, I would say keystone species. So we have the wild rice, we have the cottonwood trees, and the chokecherry. Those are some of the plants that we normally would have access to, except flooding is so scary for the colonizers. And these are just some of the federal Indian policies that affect this 1868 Eastern boundary. And we have the Rosewood Agreement. And I always put agreement because they just pick a few Indians to sign something, and similar to the 1977 Black Hills Act. It's not 3/4 of the men agreeing to it. So for me, it's not valid, but they ratify it in Congress, which for them is valid for them. And I think this is still going on right now, the 1908 Cheyenne River and Standing Rock Act. That's where they approached those tribes giving money for land loss. And like I said again, who defines land, you know, when it's flooded part of the year? And just included a couple more Supreme Court cases. 1977, Rosewood Tribe v. Knight, which reduced the Rosewood Reservation, which used to go all the way to the Missouri River, all the way back to like Oak Creek. And we have our community's Ideal and Milks Camp still there, but they reduced that whole area for white settlement. And then the 1984 Solon v. Bartlett, that's a W. That's why I put that, that's a win. But that just meant that we were able to prove that they didn't abrogate the treaty with the Cheyenne River and Standing Rock Act, because they have to be very specific to abrogate treaties. If they don't say it in there, we can claim that. And then this is just a picture of the Pick-Sloan Missouri Basin. As we all know, these three big dams are in our treaty territory, which is Oahe, Big Bend, and Fort Randall. I'm only concentrating on that part because that's part of the 1868 boundary, and we didn't have a say on these dams being built. I include this power plant because I lived in Hedog back in 2013, and they're trying to shut my lights off. So I complained to them. I was like, you guys are selling our river's power back to us, and you're trying to shut me off. Anyway, they gave me an extension, but still, they knew what I was talking about, you know? It's the truth. They're selling our river back to us. It belongs to us. And this is a NASA space station photo. So just to show how big it is from up top. I included this because this was a research proposal I put out, because being in Rosewood and Oglala, we have the Mini-Wachoni Rural Water Project. And they only like test for certain chemicals. So just the main ones like arsenic, mercury, stuff like that. But you have to know that in the fracking and back in North Dakota, they use like hundreds of chemicals. So we don't have access to each recipe each company uses. And it's like a proprietary blend. They could tell you like the Coke recipe, I guess, what's in there, but they won't tell you the amounts. So that's something that no one's testing for. So I created this with NSF funded research proposal camp that I went to, but I think that's really important to know, because the Mini-Wachoni Rural Water Project, the intake is under the Oahe, like at the bottom. So if you think about heavy metals, they're heavy sediments, they fall, and they're just sitting there in a dam, and that's the water they're piping to us on the res. And researching this on if I was able to hire like a professional dive team in Pierre, because you have to go dive down to get at that intake area. It wouldn't make sense to take a surface level sample when the intake's way down here. Kind of like a bathtub, you know, like everything's on the bottom. So just really concerns me because, you know, fracking is bad. I mean, people would know that by now. And then this is basically what I was getting at is, have we ever given up our right to steward Mini-Shoshe? I don't think we ever have. And has any of these acts of Congress addressed the ever-changing boundary water as defined in the 1868 treaty? Which made me think why they wanted it to be still, so they can make it more of a permanent boundary rather than it changing every spring based on how much precipitation we got the winter storms the previous season. And are we ready to provide a more traditional health for our future generations? Because like I said, this is like a food source. The river isn't just a boundary. The reason why so I'm just hoping that all these reservations and reserves on the future Okay. So these are the 3540 reservations and reserves in the United States and Canada where they conquered and divided us. So even now we still deal with that. Like we have issues with our IRA government. We have issue with departments within those governments. Like when I was working on some repatriation stuff at University of Kansas, I couldn't get a hold of my own tipple. Well, the Sioux tribe was more helpful to me than my own tribe. So, but that's because I don't see those boundaries. But yeah, that's pretty much all I have today. I just wanted to put that out there just because I don't know where I'm gonna go after I graduate. I was thinking about law school, but I was also thinking about just doing my PhD and concentrating on this, mainly this stuff right here. So if anybody has any questions.
Got time for a couple quick questions? Anybody? I think we're good.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it, Alicia.
Oh, you have a question?
Keep doing the good work.
Yes.
Oh, we got Lexi. You got a quick question? Okay, we'll take one question here. One quick question.
Oh, my Washita name is Manny Ironhawk. I'm from Wakapawashte. Yeah. This is an excellent presentation. And it brought up a couple of things from Wakapawashte. Your Minnesota boundary, it says the east boundary. So to me, that Missouri River to the east boundary is our water. But there's some rocks or whatever you want to call them that they were thrown in there. And one is called the mitigation bill. And nobody, as far as I know, does the water testing on Wakapawashte. And I don't trust, and we're the only tribe that pays for our water. And they put out reports, but I don't trust those reports. And when that Oahe Dam was made, some of the families that lived down on the bottom, and even grave sites down at the boarding school down on the bottom, Cheyenne River, had to be moved. Some of them got paid that did that. But you were talking about the power. There is a McLaughlin report on that Oahe Dam. And Corps engineers promised a block of power to Cheyenne River. And I've been telling that to 3 or 4 chairmen now. Nothing's done. We need to fight for those. So maybe Oceti Sakowin can take the lead, and we need to file and sue or whatever, and go that route. So I think the other thing is I teach a college class. So I asked them, if we can't drink that water, well, I don't drink it, but Standing Rock, I've been told there is already over 200 leaks. All the way up to North Dakota, there's leaks. And we're just waiting for this one over here by Standing Rock to leak, and that's gonna contaminate that whole river. And whatever Oahe Dam generates, they sell that power downstream, millions of dollars. So we need to do some action on those parts. So maybe we'll talk to Phil, and maybe we need to get into that area to start the process anyway. Yeah. I don't think I forgot anything. No. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I could explain this map a little further too. The one in the middle, the white one, the main one, I don't know if you can see my mouse. This one is the map of all the fracking areas. And if you look at some of these drill pads, they're like, I don't know if that's what they're called, but they're right on the banks of the Missouri. So our water has to travel through all that crap. I don't want to cuss in front of my elders, but there's the mini Wachoni Rural Water Project map down here, which shows where it goes on the reservation. And then this blue map on the top right corner is all the spills. Some of these spills, they're just self-reported. They're not like people going out keeping track of them. If they decide to spill, and I think the minimum to report is 250 gallons of the fracking fluid or what they're picking up. And then it's a self-reporting web-based tool they could get on there. Be like, oh, we made a spill, and then this is what we did to clean it up. But you really don't clean it up because the stuff really is water soluble. It gets in the water real quick. So that's why I was interested in some of the more extensive water testing like President Starcombs was talking about. I think that's where we need to go.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate the good work and the research you're doing. Alicia. We're almost there. Bear with us. We'll call upon our relative Lilius Jarding, mining in the Black Hills.
I think Manny's hungry.
Okay, we have just a couple more to get through here. You know, we encourage our presenters to stick around. We want to honor them at the end. You know, I think we're done here about 5, but I think it's going to be more like 5:36. So please bear with us. We appreciate you guys sticking with us this long. Let's go.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Lilius Jarding. I'm the Executive Director of Black Hills Clean Water Alliance. I'll talk about that more a bit in a minute. My heritage is Irish and Roma, and I live here in Rapid City. And now I got to get this to move. That one there. Okay, thank you. Okay. Tech support, thank you. Black Hills Clean Water Alliance was founded in 2009. We have a office here in Rapid City. We work with people throughout a broad region. And our mission is to protect Black Hills water by opposing new large-scale mining. We have a heavy focus on environmental justice, given the fact that we work on Lakota territory. We do research and public education, and our board and staff and contractors are majority Lakota. I promised Bill this picture because I wanted to just briefly talk about where our organization comes from. And this is where it comes from in sort of a long roundabout way, is Black Hills Alliance. And this picture is from 1979. And 3 of the people in this picture are highly active with Black Hills Clean Water Alliance today. So that organization was a really important, pivotal experience for a lot of us, because we learned that if you fight back and if you make alliances, you can beat mining. We stopped uranium mining in 1981. This is what we're trying to prevent. This is a picture of the only operating large-scale gold mine in the Black Hills, taken last May from the air. And it's actually much, much bigger than this. It's 17 miles around. But this picture gives you some idea of what happens to the Black Hills when So I'm going to take a bit of a roundabout. I'm going to talk about the climate crisis, and I'm going to come back to lithium mining and how those two things are related. So many people in this room know more about climate change than I do, but the basic concepts that I've had to learn are that it's not just a matter of a warmer planet. It's a matter of more extreme weather worldwide, changes in the seasons, which many of us are old enough to recognize, and the movement of wildlife, disease, and people, either to the north or to higher elevations in an attempt to get cooler weather. So I talk about the pika, which is a small animal that lives way up in the high mountains. I don't know if some of you have been exposed to pika, but they squeal when you come near them and run under the rocks. And they live above timberline where there's no trees. So they live already very high in the mountains where it's cool. But as climate change warms the earth, the pikas have nowhere to go. They can't go up any higher because they're already in the high mountains. They can't pick up and move a couple 100 miles north. So we're all the pika in this situation. People think that climate change isn't real. A lot of people in South Dakota, probably not too many people in this room believe that, but a lot of people in South Dakota do. And so I put together some actual data from federal government sources, which I know aren't always 100% reliable, but this is pretty simple. And it showed a clear increase in extreme weather. In South Dakota, there's been an increase in the number of tornadoes and in the injuries, fatalities, and property damage in the last 25 years. In the Black Hills specifically, there have been 5 times as many floods from 1986 to 2013 compared to the 35 years before that. So just 2 different periods, 35 years apart, 5 times as many floods. According to research by Texas A&M University and others, much of Western South Dakota is particularly vulnerable to climate change. And to define vulnerable, they looked at factors that reduce community resilience and that increase climate change risks. So they looked at things like social and economic factors, infrastructure, extreme events, health, and the environment. And this is the map that they showed. the darker areas are more vulnerable to the changes that come with climate change. Excuse me. And then the second map shows vulnerability to extreme weather events. And here almost all of Western South Dakota is at the highest level of risk. So with the climate crisis bringing more extreme weather, we're ground zero. We're also ground zero from the mining industry right now. I have some of these maps in the back if you want to get one from me after, or these are on our website, which I'll give you in a minute. But this is a map as of October 2nd this year. The purple, yellow, and brown are all parts of the Black Hills that are under active mining claims under federal law. An active mining claim means someone has federal government okay to drill, and if they find something, to mine. That's an 1872 law that the federal government passed. There are 293,000 acres of the Black Hills under active mining claims, and that is 23% of the whole Black Hills, almost a quarter. It's also 121,000 more acres than in April last year. So a lot of this is gold, particularly in the north. There's some uranium in the southwest, those sort of patchy areas off to the edge, and there's a lot of lithium. So one way to stop the federal law that allows mining on mining claims is to what they call withdraw the claims, and then they can't be drilled or mined. And this has been proposed by the Forest Service in the Pactola Reservoir area. And there's going to be a public comment opportunity in early 2024 that I hope everyone will take advantage of. They can come up with a withdrawal that's temporary by the Secretary of the Interior, which is what people are going for now, or it can be more permanent by Congress passing a law. And the Pactola Reservoir area also has a lot of gold claims. So those and one gold project that's proposed would be stopped by this withdrawal. And it also can be extended to other areas, and a lot of people have been asking for it, the withdrawal to extend to the entire Black Hills. It would be a temporary solution, but it would be something. So lithium mining is something that I haven't talked to this group about before because it's just popped up relatively recently, or I haven't talked to this group much about it anyway. There's a lithium mining rush around the world. Lithium is used for electric vehicle batteries. So basically electric vehicles run on lithium. And there are hundreds of pounds of lithium needed per vehicle. The Biden administration is pushing this very hard. And they are ignoring the impacts on rural areas and indigenous populations. Lithium is toxic, it's explosive. A friend of mine had a vape equipment with a lithium battery that he was carrying around in his pocket in his cargo pants, and it burst into flames. Okay, lithium is explosive, it's flammable. It's also toxic to people, wildlife, and the environment, contaminates the air and water. And in this area of the world, when they mine lithium, they do what's called pegmatite or hard rock lithium mining, which is open pit mining. And the picture shows one of the few examples I could find online of open pit lithium mining. It has been mined in the Black Hills in the past on a small scale. Australia is the world's largest producer. Chile has the largest reserves, not China. The mining industry is always talking about China, but that's not the issue with lithium. There are 9 lithium operators in the Black Hills that we know of. There are 5 state mining licenses to mine lithium on what they call private land. At least one of them has recently been an active mine in Lawrence County up in the north. So I want to talk a bit about state law just so you have a picture of kind of what's going on here. For state permitting for exploration for mining, for drilling, if it's on privately controlled land, there's no opportunity for public participation. There's no tribal consultation or cultural resources survey. If a person or a company applies to drill and follow the state's conditions, they can drill. It's just like that. You pay a fee, you put up a small bond. And if the land is controlled by the Forest Service, however, then someone who wants to do exploratory drilling has to go through the Environmental Policy Act process, which is much longer and allows public participation. So Longview Minerals, which is the branch of an Australian company, wants to drill up to 500 holes south of Custer. SDO Services, which is a branch of a company from Switzerland, wants to drill about 2 miles north of the Six Grandfathers along Old Hill City Road, up to 55 holes, and immediately south of Hill City up to 80 holes. And I mean, if you look at it from the air, the boundary of the area they want to drill in is 2 trees from the boundary of Hill City. Very close. Exploration brings its own problems. I'm not going to go into any great detail. I'm trying to speed it up a little bit here. Now, this is to get a state mining license for lithium mining. Okay, there is basically no protection if someone wants to explore for and mine lithium. That's the bottom line. But lithium is categorized with sand and gravel, not with hard rock mining. So you have to fill in a 1-page mining license application, pay $100 a year, put a notice in the newspaper. There's no tribal consultation. There's no reclamation plan. There's no cultural resources plan, and there's no public participation if it's on privately controlled land. So this is the lithium mining that's been starting up now, is under those conditions. So now when we're talking about lithium as a solution for climate change and mining lithium, the first thing to realize that mining is not the way to reduce climate change. It's not a solution. Mining is a large contributor to climate change. Depending on who the author is, mining contributes from 10 to 35% of all carbon emissions worldwide. Lots of heavy equipment, lots of processing, lots of electricity used that may be generated with fossil fuels. So the green energy revolution, as they call it, or as it's planned right now, would require lots more mining. What that basically does, and I've been actually saying this for a while, is that what the current plan for dealing with climate change does is it moves pollution from the tailpipes of vehicles in the urban areas to our communities in the rural areas. That's all it does. And we can't mine our way out of the climate crisis. So we need alternatives, and there's a lot of research underway on alternatives to lithium batteries, but none of it is at industrial scale yet. So lithium for electric vehicle batteries, this thing is a way to reduce climate change. It's destructive and emits carbon, but we want to stop both lithium mining and climate change. We don't want to just say, let's not mine lithium and let climate change do what it's going to do. So that question we attempted to answer at a conference in November. And we made a plan, beginnings of a plan to try to deal with these intertwined issues in our area. And I have a handout on this that I'll go around and drop off for people when I'm done talking. So the conference involved 15 organizations. The conference report outlines the issues. We came up with a declaration that focuses on environmental justice and alliances, and a summary of 8 work areas that we're going to pursue to work on these solutions for our region. And these are the work areas. A lot of work on building alliances, public education, legislative, all these areas. So that's one issue. I just have, oh, you just missed it, Paula, you were up here. There's one more thing I want to make you aware of, which I'll also have a handout on. And this is that as a result of the second gold rush, there's a company named Solitario Resources that has 2 projects in the Northern Hills. One is called Golden Crest, and that's what I'm going to talk about here in just a minute. That's immediately on the west edge of Spearfish Canyon. The other is called the Ponderosa Project, which is southwest of Cheyenne Crossing, including being close to Sundance grounds. For the Golden Crest project, there's an opportunity to comment on that project and object to it until January 26th. And that's the other handout I'll give you, is a little yellow sheet. So my bottom line in what I do is that alliances work and opposition to mining projects works. These are all mining projects that have been stopped. There are a number more, but these are some of them. And then our website and my email are on the bottom, or else they'll be on the handouts I give you. So that's all I have to say from my end.
We have 1 or 2 questions for Lilius. Go ahead, Lexi. We got 2 here. You can be our 2 questions.
I'm hard of hearing, so I need the microphone.
You mentioned about weather, climates. The half of the world, it's a frigid cold, and other half of the world, frigid hot. Is that true? The climate change. Half of the frigid cold, the other one is the scorching hot.
Well,
and then naming, it's a violation. That's a federal violation. An 1868 treaty, Article 1, Batman Clause of 1868 treaty. We're gonna have to do something, treaty peoples. 1868, Oceti Sakowin. Let's get down, let's get down. Make some resolutions to the Washington or Secretary of Interior, wherever. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I think we have one more from Lexi Bill here.
Yes, Lilius, can you give a little bit of explanation on the effects on the water? For example, you mentioned Pactola. Pactola is a water for Rapid City.
Yep.
So can you give us a little kind of an education about the immediate effects of mining on Pactola?
Yeah, the mining project that we're trying to get into on hold with a withdrawal is a gold project that's immediately by the edge of Pactola. If they're mining it like that first picture I showed you, immediately on the edge of Pactola, we could expect to see cyanide spills, dirt and soil getting into the water, arsenic, heavy metals. Those are all things that come with large scale mining and water.
Thank you. That's our drinking water for Rapid, right?
Yeah, Pactola is the drinking water for Rapid City, Box Elder, Ellsworth Air Force Base. and a lot of other communities sort of around the area.
Now, have you heard anything about, sorry for another question, but have you heard anything about the pipeline to bring Missouri River water to Rapid City?
Yeah.
Because that'll be a result of that.
Well, one thing we think is that part of the reasoning behind them wanting to bring more water, I mean, first the water goes down to the Missouri River from our area, then they want to pump it back up here. And one of the reasons for that is because then if water's destroyed by mining, they could say we still have water here. So we think it's kind of not a smart idea to do that in the first place. There's a treaty issues involved, of course, and water rights. And I've run the numbers, and Rapid City doesn't need more water. It needs to use the water it has wisely.
Lilius, how long before the Black Hills becomes a Superfund site?
Yeah, we're trying to prevent that. There's already 2 of them here.
Yeah, I've got a question. Go ahead. Go ahead.
There's another prediction. It's just a prediction. Possibly, we talk about water shortage. Water. The Missouri River could go dry. It's a prediction. Missouri River is gonna be gone.
Yeah.
The water prediction. The only thing we got.
Yep. Well, we
We
got.
got somebody.
Yeah.
We have to pray
Mm-hmm.
to stop those.
Thank you.
Yeah, I had a quick question here for you, Lilius. We've been around here long enough to,
There you are.
yeah, since the Black Hills Alliance, we've been around here long enough to see the changes in community opposition. I mean, this is doubling the development in a year. And where the hell are Hill City, Keystone, Custer, Spearfish, Rapid City? Why aren't they all turning out in arms? Maybe this isn't something you feel you can talk about, but I think, what's going on here? Why isn't there just a huge mass outrage against all these companies and kicking them out like we did before in 1980?
There is some. Rapid City passed a couple of resolutions at the city council against gold mining. There's interest in the other communities you mentioned. Some of them we've been able to organize, but we were shorthanded, of course. And but there's a lot more room for just plain people getting vocal. We get up to 1,000 comments on these projects during the Forest Service processes.
And are you also getting support from each of the tribal councils?
From what?
Each of the tribal councils in South
The
Dakota.
tribal councils have passed resolutions on most of this. The lithium issue is still new enough. I don't know if they've all passed resolutions on that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, one more here.
Okay.
Oh, thank you. Just a quick question. I read in the newspapers that they're considering Amtrak to Rapid City. And what kind of impact is that going to have?
Trains are much more efficient fuel-wise than cars. So I'm all for it. Yeah. Besides, I love trains. I love trains.
Planes, trains, automobiles.
Yeah. Thank you
Okay.
all.
Yep, thank you guys. Thank you, Lilius, for your presentation. We appreciate the good work you're doing. Okay, forgive me if I say his name wrong. Joe Rasheta, that might be correct. Executive Director of Native Biodata Consortium, be presenting on Oceti Sakowin data sovereignty. Whoop.
Chante Vaste, Nape Ichizia below, Date Kichi Naji, Machia below. Dato Riata Kanani Cheri Simarani, Hare Parani, Hama Shaka Ini Huriatekwa Himbo, Hi Aringashinga, Sarata Kuritanapu. So I'm a scientist who works on Shine River, where my wife and kids are enrolled. But I myself am a Purepecha native from Mexico. And I introduced myself both in Lakota and in Purepecha. And I said, Father Sky and Mother Earth, the sun and the wind planned good today to bring us together in a good way. And my name is Smoke from Many Fires. And I'm here to talk about, hopefully tie up a lot of things that we were talking about over the last few days. So those of you that don't know, is the world right now is a wild west in terms of data collection, technology, and ownership of whatever data or resources that are collected. Just like we had our relatives up here earlier from Palestine, a lot of these, acts of aggression have to do with trying to get land, the things that live on the land, the things that are below the land, and all of the data that can find those resources. So the technologies today are very powerful. They can pretty much see everything all the time. We know this already from stuff in 2016, scraping social media to affect the US election. And it's just getting worse. So what I'm gonna talk about today is some of the stuff that's been done in the United States and some of the stuff that's been done around the world where tribal nations have to get tough and pass some laws in order to protect the things that belong to them. So if you don't know the term IDSOV is Indigenous Data Sovereignty, which has been in use at least since 2018. I was at NCAI a few weeks ago, and Indigenous Data Sovereignty was on everybody's lips, mostly because the United States Patent and Trade Office has invited tribal leaders to come to the table and discuss what it is that tribes think that they own. And those discussions have been going on for about 2.5 years now. So as we know, COVID did a lot of different things as an emergency use authorization. And so a lot of rules have been relaxed. In many cases, those rules have not been put back up. So for biomedical data in particular, there are rules for FDA, which is like drugs and clinical trials, the CDC, which is a public health law, the NIH, which has no real law, just policy, something called the Belmont Report, the Common Rule, and then HIPAA, which protects your electronic medical information, and then corporations. All of the barriers between these different entities were relaxed. And because people thought things went so well during COVID in terms of science and medicine, they don't really want to put them back up. And that's a problem for American Indian and Alaska Native nations. So at least since 2013, people have been talking about open data. And this is a worldwide philosophy now, is since people pay for data with their public tax dollars, they feel like everybody should have access to that data. But of course, open data is also open to corporations. So even though you and I might be able to get that data, corporations can take a bigger slice of that pie. It'd be like if you had a pool in your backyard and every day you went to the pool and took out a bucket of water for your personal use, but also a big tanker truck comes over and drains that pool. That's the problem I see with open data. There are good scientific reasons for open data. And as a scientist, I support them, but there are these social reasons why data should be controlled and monitored. So it's not just biomedical data, all data. I am in support of all tribal data being under tribal authority and regulation. I don't think the federal government has any right to see or use tribal data without permission. So in this open data environment, the United States has asserted its own data sovereignty and put up zero trust laws to prevent things from happening like China taking intellectual property for movies, for music, for computer software, all these kinds of things. But in that whole time since 2013, there really hasn't been any discussion with tribal nations on whether their data should be open. It's just assumed since the feds pay for it, it belongs to them. So we are advocating at the Native Biodata Consortium, and we're going around doing this for free. We're going everywhere talking about this stuff, that in order for tribes to share data, they need all of the stuff that's in the blue box here. They need the legal protections. They need the infrastructure to do the work. They need the people, the capacity and capability to do the work in order for tribal sovereignty to grow, economies to improve, and then, you know, land and strength of tribes to grow. So what are indigenous data? Like I said, we believe everything's indigenous data. So data about your community, the land, the water, the agriculture, the cattle, your sacred sites, territories, plants, animals, everything. Also data about how you run your tribe or your businesses, administrative data, legal and health data, social and commercial data. So like your business data, your voting data. And then data about people as Native people, how they traditionally live their lives, language, culture, artifacts, and more, we keep hearing about these relatives that are in museums or at boarding schools that we need to bring back. So all of it is data. And indeed, data has been collected on tribes' behalf for a long time. There's, of course, all the stuff that's in the business column there that tribes don't necessarily claim, but they should. And then all of the government data, especially surveillance data that tribes and licensor, like business licenses, licenses for teachers, licenses for medical staff. That's not really under tribal purview, but it should be. And then there's the stuff that we do, which is research, which sometimes more or less is under tribal control. It depends on the tribe's regulation and how often they're asked to be participants in that regulation or not. And then there's the stuff that's all the way on the right side there, which is normally what tribes consider their purview for data. But as I said, all of it belongs to tribes. And these little red bars, normally right now, 2 of these categories are done without your consent. And the last 2 categories are done sort of with mixed consent on whether or not other people can use or see your data. So this is an issue that's not solved and of growing importance. In 2019, the NIH did this thing called the All of Us program, where they're trying to collect 1 million samples of DNA from the whole country, and they want tribes to participate. And what they called consultation wasn't really consultation, it was just notification. And they tried to pull this at NCAI in 2019. The people at NCI were so mad that they wrote this letter, this cease and desist letter saying NIH needs to stop, because not only is it not consultation, but they can't take your DNA, the essence of who you are, without permission. Since then, 11 different resolutions have been passed at NCAI about different aspects to data over the internet, whether or not tribes are given the resources to create their own internet and broadband services, reproductive rights, and whether or not tribes can make laws against abortion or not abortion. We helped them pass a machine learning and artificial intelligence resolution to protect tribes from machine learning and artificial intelligence scraping their data. NAGPRA, which was on hold for about 7 years, they're saying that in this next month they're going to announce all the new updates to NAGPRA. Supposedly it's stronger, we'll see. Traditional knowledge resolutions, protecting traditional knowledge, Indian Child Welfare Act, and the boarding school issue. These are all aspects of data. So we all need a safe harbor, and at the Native Biodata Consortium, we are the only bio and data repository in the world that is inside the geographic border and legal jurisdiction of an American Indian nation. And we feel that makes us very powerful to protect not only American Indian data, but other people's data. We've gotten phone calls from people from New Zealand, from the Pacific Islands, from the islands in the Caribbean, because they don't trust their settler colonial governments with their data, so they'd rather have it with us. And there are some people here in the room, the Ironhawks and some other people who are on our community advisory board. So we have local people helping us make these important decisions about protecting tribal data. So you know where we are, we're smack dab in the middle of the Cheyenne River Sioux Reservation in Eagle Butte. And recently, just a couple of weeks ago, we were awarded by the NIH a major grant for 3 years to come up with a plan of action to protect data from 11 different tribal projects around COVID. So it's the first time this has ever happened. It's the first time that the federal government has ever trusted a Native organization with this much money and this much responsibility. It's called the Tribal Data Repository, and we are gonna do the best we can to protect everybody's data, at least in the lower 48. So we have a lot of different projects. One of them we have right now is on autoimmune illness in the Lakota. So we've come up with a lot of different information about how rheumatoid arthritis is different in Lakota individuals compared to everybody else who has rheumatoid arthritis. And then we're doing a lot of other things around COVID. The reason why this is an issue now is because the United States has decided that everything they do now will be done with artificial intelligence. So they're prepping all of the data collections, all the data that was from 75 years ago to the present, all the new data they're collecting will be seeable by artificial intelligence. And that's a problem. Number one, it's out there and they didn't ask permission for it to be used this way, right? Second, artificial intelligence can do something called breadcrumbing. So the previous speaker talked about lithium and mining. They're already using artificial intelligence to find things that you can't find through conventional means. So the artificial intelligence may find something on Pine Ridge or on Rosebud, and they don't necessarily have to tell you. They might come to you after they already know that that resource is there and make some squirrely deal with you in order to get at that resource. They know ahead of you what's there, what's underground. So it's called the Hansel and Gretel effect. Breadcrumbs are left by these digital footprints across the internet, and people who would have the sophistication and know-how can put those footprints together and find things like minerals. They can find things about your private information. They can find things about medical discoveries, lots of different things. And they've mostly been using it lately to find criminals, right? And some of my lawyer friends have tried to bring it to court saying using these technologies are against the Constitution, against the 4th and 6th Amendment. This is a legal search and seizure. So far, they have not won these cases, but it's going to be an increasing thing as more and more people's privacy are revealed through these technologies. So, like I said, they come with these squirrely propositions. So usually they say, if you don't do this, tribes are going to miss out. We're trying to help you. And then something goes wrong, like the Havasupai case in Arizona, and then tribes don't want to participate anymore because they've lost their trust with the federal government and scientists. And then the whole cycle keeps going over and over again. As I said, with the All of Us project, the top 2 rows is how it's going right now. As they collect this data, the data is open, and then only people with resources can turn it into money, which is pharmaceutics companies. What we're recommending is the bottom line is that if Native data is used or collected in this way, that there has to be collective interest and protection from the fractioning of that collective interest. So right now, the policy from the United States says they won't collect DNA on the reservation if you don't want to. But if your people go to Rapid City to a hospital, they can collect it. That's a problem. So we know data, in their mind, data isn't free. I mean, data is free, sorry, but in our mind, data isn't free. These companies, Ancestry.com and 23andMe, are making tons and tons of money selling people the idea that they could be native, right? And most of the data that they're using are from Central and South America, not from the United States, not from Canada. And then people are going around saying that they're native when they may not be. And not one tribal member is making $1 on this business, right? So I think we'd all agree that tribes are in the green bubble. We have primacy rights, policies, and law. At the Native Bio, we're trying to fill in the yellow bubble with infrastructure, expertise, and networks. But what we don't have is the red bubble. We don't have control over issues because we don't have the money, we don't have the media, and we don't have a way to implement these things. So right now, Lahaina, the fire in Hawaii, our relatives are protesting because they're sifting through the ashes for DNA from the people that passed away. And they say it's for identification, but they didn't say anything about where it goes after that. And the people in Hawaii are like, you can use it to identify those relatives, but after that, it needs to be destroyed. And the state of Hawaii is like, maybe not. So that's what I'm saying, that tribes and indigenous people don't have control over those issues. So we're trying to go around the country and make sure tribes have all the bubbles filled, and it's all into the larger black circle of tribal sovereignty, self-determination. So like I said, it's the Wild West. United States and private companies are sucking up data like crazy, and tribes don't know about it. But we're pointing out that regulation is also data. In order to have a regulation, you need data. If you're doing a driver's license test or a teacher certificate or a doctor's license, you need data to create that test in order to make sure that those people can do their job. And then after the regulation is created, that regulation is data to use in court, right? And then after people violate your regulation, you track over time how well your regulation or your data did in protecting your people. So we want tribes to regulate more. We want them to regulate better. So, of course, back when treaties were made, nobody knew that these technologies or these resources were going to exist. So we have a couple of things on our side. One of them is the reserved rights doctrine. Anything that was not specifically specified in treaty still belongs to the tribes. So DNA, plant medicines, the lithium that the previous speaker was talking about, new things that might have popped up in polluted water, that should all belong to the tribe because it never was ceded in a treaty. And this has been held up by the Clinton administration, the Obama administration, and now the Biden administration. So Biden has said, yes, we need to consult with tribes with anything new that wasn't put in a treaty. So this just came out last week. Biden has put out an executive order for more funding so that tribes can claim their sovereignty and their self-determination and make it easier for them to do these things without a bunch of bureaucracy and a bunch of reporting and a bunch of proof legally that they have the right to do these things. So we'll see if he goes through with it. The other thing that I mentioned earlier is the US Patent Office has made the offer to tribes to talk about what tribes want to patent or protect through trademark or copyright or whatever. And this has been going on for about 2.5 years. This particular company, law company, they serve almost all the Oklahoma tribes in Oklahoma. I don't know if there's a legal company in the Dakotas that has put out this announcement and tried to protect your interests, or at least helped you decide how to protect your interests. The other thing that's on the thing is in 2012, the United States banned any patent for human genetic material. And then a couple of years later, Australia also had that ban. And then Europe followed through. But the Trump administration and the Biden administration want to lift that ban because they think there's a lot of money in human DNA. So this was from 2022. Guess whose DNA they want? They don't want white people's DNA. So these things have been going faster and faster. I'm part of 4 of these projects. There's the Earth Biogenome Project where they want to sequence every living thing on the planet within 10 years. There's the Human Pangenome Reference where they want to sequence a bunch of humans to make a better human map. This new thing, the Human Virome Project, they want to do all the viruses that live inside you or on you. Wastewater or sewer water, they're surveilling the different things that live in the sewer water, whether they're human or non-human. And they're also looking at things like drug use, like going through, it's like basically going through your garbage and looking through your private information, except they're doing it with sewer water. The Nagoya Protocol is something out there that's to protect indigenous people, but the United States has not signed that international agreement. And then the Convention Against Biocolonialism and Biopiracy, again, the United States is not a participant. And then the Global Microbiome Project, which I'll talk to you in the next slide. So if you remember, Homestake Mine contaminated a bunch of water on reservations in this state, and they didn't pay for the cleanup. Now, 30, 40, 50 years later, they want to come back and find the things that live in that contaminated water, because those things that live in that contaminated water survived, and they could do all of these new tricks, these new chemical tricks. And those chemical tricks can be used for cancer. They can be used for exobiology, for going to outer space. They could be used to make new chemicals. They can be used for bioremediation. And this article puts this guy in a very good light, saying that somehow he's the savior, not saying that Homestake was the organization that caused the problem in the first place, right? Because these bugs, these bacteria that live in the water are superbugs, and they're going to make those guys really rich. But I say that if the contamination is on your reservation and they find it there, it belongs to you, and you should be making the money, especially since they didn't clean it up. So we've been going around. The first one we did a resolution with the Grand Chiefs Council in Ontario, and we helped them pass a data resolution to protect all of their data, especially from artificial intelligence. We did the same thing at the National Congress of American Indians last year, had a resolution passed. We did it this year with the help of our community advisory group from Cheyenne River to pass the first ever tribal data sovereignty and research governance plan. So this is just the first step. The resolution is a declaration. Now comes the 50-page ordinance followed by the 10 or 20-page statute that allows all of these things to be tried in a tribal court. So we are playing at a very high level, and we're trying to get the tribes to do the same. So we're trying to protect them. I also went down to Colombia and helped people in the Amazon come up with a declaration to protect their resources in the Amazon and in the Andes. And then here last year, I presented this idea of having the Oceti Sakowin Treaty Council pass something similar. So this is kind of a combination of a bunch of different declarations that I shared with Phil, and we didn't really get to work on it at all this year. I would invite the Treaty Council to work on it themselves and sign it and pass it. But if you don't want to, at least write a letter of support for the things that we do here in South Dakota, going around to different tribal councils and trying to get them to pass this for themselves. Because I think it's really going to take a combination of these IRA governments and then all of the traditional people that are in the Oceti Treaty Conference to get this done and protected. Otherwise, this is happening so fast, they're stealing things so quickly. I think, 5 or 10 years from now, people are gonna like, how did they get this stuff out of our control, right? So I'm gonna read this real fast. So the Unified Declaration of Objection and Petition for Resolution Let it be said, we assert and acknowledge our own and other Indigenous peoples' sovereignty, autonomy, and primacy in this hemisphere currently labeled as North and South America. According to our habitation, our creation stories, treaties that were struck, self-determination acts of the 1970s, our growing governing principles, and exploitation by European invaders and their descendants, that new technologies and extractive projects must be in our control as a matter of course in restorative justice. We recognize and acknowledge that the world since the market crashes of 1998 and 2009 have, can't see it, sorry, have created wealth not on the physical resources, but on the data of Indigenous people. In that acknowledgement, we recognize digital twinning being the use of proxy data, meaning environmental, demographic, public health data, et cetera, that machine learning and artificial intelligence platforms might quickly and surreptitiously strip Indigenous people of their data sovereignty without their proper time for review, consideration, or knowing. We acknowledge that not all data are equal and that some hold administrative, cultural, spiritual, or economic value, and as such may require sharing with external partners for the betterment of our programs and services. However, that data must be determined solely by us as the Oceti Sakowin, regardless of the data collector or the funder. We define data as any information collected or not collected that reflect, describe, enhance, detract, or define us as a group and may help or harm us as a group. This includes, but is not limited to, Indigenous knowledge, environmental data, health data, demographic data, economic data, research data, omics data, and the internet or machine-derived data. Current data practices and priorities put forth by the federal and state governments do not align with self-determination as community defined. It is our sacred data, and we should be mindful of seven generations forward. Thank you. Federal policy misalignments include data priorities that weaponize data or create further dispossession of Indigenous people and their land, data systems that are underregulated, biased, racist, or ill-intended, data systems that discredit, undermine, isolate, or demoralize Indigenous peoples, all the while diminishing Indigenous sovereignty in our sphere and democratic rights and processes in the colonizer's sphere. Data systems and technologies have massive and unsustainable ecological impacts, which the previous speaker talked about. Lack of due diligence, ensuring or detailing a clear path to data implementation and data security as provided by the Belmont Report and the Intellectual Property Standard. Article 3 of the United Nations Declaration of Indigenous Rights of Indigenous Peoples outlines that Indigenous peoples have the rights to self-determination. By virtue of that right, they freely determine their political status and freely pursue their economic, social, and cultural development. And Article 4 of UNDRIP, which states, Indigenous peoples in exercising their right to self-determination have the right to autonomy or self-government in matters relating to their internal or local affairs, as well as ways of means for financing their autonomous functions. Therefore, a nation can be advancing sovereign data priorities outside of colonial systems. Supporting current data ambitions advances capitalism and furthers colonial agendas at the great risk to nations, people, flora, fauna, infrastructure, cultures, languages, and traditions. Let's see, where did they go? I'm going to skip to the end. These were out there in the hallway with our NBDC table, but I can make this available to anybody who wants it through email. So what we want to do as grassroots people is mandate that tribal governments build relationships with experts who have experience and track record of defending in the fields of Indigenous data sovereignty and oversee the co-development of data risk assessment tools, apply risk assessment tools to existing data sharing agreements across Oceti Sakowin, and report on possible exposures that may undermine sovereignty, create an intertribal forum to secure and safeguard sovereignty and jurisdiction over big data and omics, including the development of educational and practical tools for the use of communities, including short-term plans of action and long-term solutions. Ensure that funding, wherever it's derived for implementation, capacity building, and the quality of life improvements are named and associated with data collection funding mechanisms so that the research pipeline is either a closed system within Indigenous systems or transparently bidirectional when approached from systems outside the nation. Create an annual reporting system to relay progress and unity of protections across Oceti Sakowin. Therefore, be finally resolved that the Oceti Sakowin is committed to self-determined and sovereign transformations that will increase control over the nation's health and wellness, land restorations, repatriation of Indigenous heritage and property, and our overall quality of life, and that no testing or data sampling of or for omics or other data collection happen on our relations, two-legged, four-legged, winged, crawling, or unseen, resources by known or unknown methods is permitted in the Oceti Sakowin or urban communities. Remember I said they want to do it in urban settings, and or kin community defined regardless or when or by whom it was collected or the location of storage, be it in warehouses, museums, university anthropology departments, unauthorized burial grounds, or retained as specimens in laboratory inventories must be returned forthwith at the expense of the party. And all inventories vetted by representatives of the Oceti Sakowin. So there is a military project called the Million Man Veterans Program, where they are taking native DNA and not telling us how much of it they have. So with that, I'll stop if anybody has questions.
I have a question real quick. I feel too eager. Something that needs to be looked at, explore is a laboratory for the Oceti Sakowin. And we need the experts to work together so that we have that for ourselves. Instead, a lot of time, once again, we do a lot too much outsourcing of our work. It always goes to somebody else. But we need to start doing things for ourselves. Thank you.
Two more.
I just have a quick question for both our elders in the room and also Joe. My name is Dr. Stephanie Littlehawk, Big Crow, Oglala Lakota, raised in Wakpamani District and Calico. I only did a quick introduction just because I know we're short on time. So for the audience and especially the elders, I know we came and presented like 2 years ago, I believe.
It was last year.
Was it last year? Okay, so hence I have a short memory. One of the things that I was, I'm always reaching out to, and so I was raised with my Lexi Wilmer Mesteth, and then now like I reach out to our elders and I ask them, we know our language can never be written. And we know that our energy is language, or it's energy. And so I always ask, like, is there a word in the language of the Oceti Sakowin that defines this process of what they call in biophysics, transference? And the only example I can give from that is for Alice in Wonderland. Do you know where the cat's head appears here and then the tail appears here? And so in biophysics, that's called tunneling or transference. Well, since 2016, Arizona State University has been using, this way of manipulating molecules, mass and matter to actually use that process to speed up genetic sequencing. And so what I do is I try to learn what words in our Lakota language are similar to what Western, what I call pseudosciences, has, quote unquote, discovered. So they think they discovered gut health. No, kanega. Like that's why we're the gut eating savages of today. We already knew that. It's in our ancient language. So when I asked the audience, because that exact example, that's what they're using in biophysics today. So they're trying to speed up genetic sequencing because and I don't know if Joe mentioned this earlier, but DNA or data, however you want to put it, is the new liquid gold. And so then I had to question when we presented, I think it was last year, because I do have my doctorate. I studied all various fields of sciences. I did exactly what was told of me. And when I start looking at how Western science and biophysics is using these mechanisms to actually speed up that process because they know the financial benefit of it, and there's no rate of return back to the people, what's going to happen is that all of this discovery will turn into big pharmaceutical companies. They'll make medicine and they obviously won't give anything back to us. IHS is underfunded, but they'll sell it at the highest value that they can. And so that's where I ask in between worlds and in between realms is one, we have to look at it from an economic perspective as well, and then the spiritual aspect, because that's where the elders come in. Because we know it's energy, and I know that when I leave this Unchimaka, I want to be able to pick up my sicha and go back to the Wichakri Oyate. So if my DNA is still here and they're using these advanced Western sciences and biophysics, like that cat in Alice in Wonderland, to speed up genetic sequencing, to see how resilient our DNA is, and obviously it is because we're still here today, then will I return whole? Like, what is the spiritual harm? The unknown spiritual harm. And so, Joe, I know that for the Biodata Consortium, I know you've, really worked hard in pushing this along. And I know when the declaration is extremely advanced, is the Native Biodata Consortium, or will you think of possibly maybe visiting each of the subdivisions individually and then critiquing each of the letters of support or declarations to each subdivision in support of a genetic research center, but that will also allow us to take the lead in our ownership of the digital and data sovereignty.
Yeah, if I'm invited, I'll come.
Why wait for an invite? Why?
Mostly because I don't know where to go.
Okay, well, I'll lead. I mean, of course, I'll take you around, but because there's going to be different questions from our elders that need to understand it from different perspectives. And so we need kind of like those, a venue to be able to present that in a meaningful and mindful way.
Okay, last one, Steve.
Yeah, Steve Newcomb. It's interesting that the John Cabot, pardon my voice, the John Cabot Charter was a patent, a royal patent. And so it's a patenting all the geographical areas of the earth. So that doctrine of discovery is now operating on the molecular level, on the cellular level, and the genetic level. And then they're patenting, they're using the same pattern of all that. But my question is, given that Indian Health Service is under the U.S. military, to what extent does the U.S. government already have a tremendous amount of our biomedical data? And what do we do about that?
Yeah, I don't know. I know that it's a worry. Officially, IHS is supposed to work like every other hospital, and all the samples get destroyed as soon as they give you a diagnosis, whatever it is, the flu or whatever. We don't know that for a fact, but I know that during COVID, most of the IHS regions gave the COVID data to the tribes. But in this Great Plains region, I was on a call where a woman who was from IHS said, I want to make it clear that COVID data belongs to IHS. And me and a few other people objected to that. So I think a lot of this is done on the whim of the directorship of each region. And I would like to have tribal leaders push against that.
Well, I think, thanks for that. I think that when they say it belongs to IHS, they mean it belongs to the U.S. military. And that's a longer conversation about all of that. But yeah, thank you very much.
Oh. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Melvin, I just had one more comment that that data that's also collected with IHS should be some thought should be given to when women are sent out to different locations to have their babies, because there's no birthing locations on reservations. So when they do go out, they have their babies there, their information and umbilical cords and navels and all that kind of stuff is collected by them hospitals as well.
We've actually had that argument with IHS because they do, when you go and referred somewhere, they definitely take control of the finances, right? They don't want to be overcharged if you go to Bismarck or Rapid City Regional, right? They say our trust responsibility of our Native people extend to those urban environments, but only the financial part, because they said, well, you have another responsibility for their data, especially if they're recruited into research studies. And they said, oh no, that's up to the individual. And so, yeah, we've had that fight.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate you. Joe, Kola, a lot of good work you're doing, important work. Give them a round of applause, please. Okay, moving up, next on our agenda, Friends of the Children, Marlin Medicine Horse. We're almost there, bear with us.
Penti wa ste mitaki api, iuski wa chinkapi. Dona ya hipiki, iuha chante wa ste na pe, choose apelo. Misam wanietu niotapi, itoka na wajina wawaglake kile emichikdu japo. La kome chaje ki toka he yanka, lemie. Washichu ea Marlin Medicine Horse machapalo. Tashunke wanka na kyuksa mataha. Manderson awalti. Yes. My relatives, very briefly, I wanted to talk to you about the work I do for Friends of the Children. I'm a professional mentor. I serve 8 youth that go to school at Wounded Knee District School, Porcupine, and Our Lady of Lourdes. So I spend 2 hours in school inclusion with each student, serve as a para, I assist them, 2 hours out of school. 2 hours out of school, I operate off of the 9 core assets. They're research-based assets, which are similar to our Lakota values. And so not only that, we have a 2-gen approach. We work not only with our youth, but with our families as well. And I was quite excited whenever I seen the opportunity to work for this organization. 2 reasons being is that their motto is 18 years, no matter what. And I truly believe our young boys need solid male positive role models. And I want to be that for our Wakayanja. And not only that, I get to incorporate Lakota culture, Lakota language, the songs, because it is important that our youth have their identity, that they know who they are, who they come from. They come from smart, intelligent, strong, courageous people. And if they knew our history, our teachings, especially our oral history, that they'll have what it takes to be successful. And I want them to grow up to be scientists, to be lawyers, to be doctors, so that they can come back and help their people. Which leads me to why I came here. I always was curious about the treaty conferences, these conversations, but I never had the courage just to go. But I recently had a relative say, you should come. And that's all it took. So I want to be that relative that does that for our Wankainja. I want to be that connection, that bridge. And I want the elders in here, the people in here to know that there is hope. Our kids have been dealt harsh realities, but firsthand, I've seen how strong they are, that the potential that they carry every single day. And with the right guidance, the right direction, that they're gonna be okay. They'll have what they need. So I came here with an open mind. I came here to learn because I wanna be in these circles and these conversations. I wanna help with the treaties. And I'm thankful that I could be here amongst you all to learn and to share what we're doing at Friends of the Children. There's all kinds of things I wanted to talk about, but I know time's short. So the last thing I want to share with you is the future is bright. Let's do it.
Okay, with that, we'd like to call on our Chinupa Owinka, Lakshi Orville, come up and share some words with us. Opila Tonka, Lakshi.
Mitakuye was. Dans particulier, il y a eu que leche xestapak ta glina jipi. Nuha heche xestapak le lila wakha. Chante yompi. Ekta bea oyati uchone ki. Ina ija ya yoti eki api. Na tuktugna heche oyati uchone ki le wanki glaka. A particulier heche chanu pawenka emir. Na you Excuse Chasha, which one ekile, Chanupa waka, Muchetaha, Naonjipi. I bet you ha, na Onya, I bet you can waka, Mucheta, Wachik you gaga. Wale onashipikile, Dila, was that Hankika Ugahuki, Makak. Now, which way, you know, why yash? Takueche, you know, which took Ankile, which at the ha, when at Hokata kia, you know, Ukachipi. Washichuki, when you watch a Kokata, I hear with Wapi Chetaha, you had Najipi. Naha. Ina tuktogna heche is de wapi sapa uncheta ha ina wocheki hakagapi ahiu na leche ukonya pikile taku gash na makakaneche wakonkilapi makochikile wakon taku eche makakana wakon nuha hechakchi okay how we track it da and tohan eche una taha oati pakita pikte chanashna wa makashka uyasi yapi nuha wale wani jipikile taku gash na nakiyukse chake hina ugables Namakochikija Muchuyopi Nakiyuk. Nukana Wale Onaji Pikile, Kiwayo Kithapi, and Taku Wuyuksa, and Wayashi. Yotash Taku Kash na Ashkalia. Namaziska Mucheta na Aikagi. Chake Lila Utechia, H. Ohinajipi. Le ona hiena wekta yunka nija oyati ona wotaki igulonyapi. H. ona sitranka wokik suye ocheta shungaka kapik te chake. No kuache wiyoya pataki ache mani shotakta ache nija ena igulonyapi. Omani kakapikte. Nachshi makoche akan leche optapta eche ki omonipi. Naha tuktugnache oyati okonya pikile wablese. Take mitake pi ta kueche wiuksha trankikia. Hank ehan wo track iktache na otkachin kile wakhankila. Wichoye kile wakha. Ta kukash na wiki chetaha na oyate oya pikile na ya wichoni. Wichon chage kile. Wiki chetaha wichon chage he wia na wichasha. Na ta kueche wiuksha kile chetaha otkachin kile wakha. Chake na apetu kile nakshi ile chanupa kile yaha na oranjina awambla. Na onshi chake na hochu kesna na wochike misha wate obecha wochiku kakapi. Ashwale hona jipiki na taku eche na ukachi pikile unchata ha ya wa ake yuashte na yuakankte. Chake the chanupa the sami chanupa ahi ha the uyaki. Wichasha nash wia na wanki glake kawachi. Only le duktognache na oyati chanupa wanka. Chanupa wanka na wotkachin. Kacha ikpakita pin wotkachin washte na wanki glake. Na onshi chake na hoya. Nukha apetukile nakshi na yake. Chake mitake pi. Wale hona jipiki. Wichoya washteste nake wichoya ota wayash. Blessings to all of you. I'd like to say it's an honor to always talk about the treaties. We'll come back to a sacred place. We call it Chesapa, the Black Hills. A place where a spirit woman brought the chanupa called Devil's Tower. I remind the people as a bundle keeper that Wakantaka gave us this beautiful life. Everything that came from the sun, Nojimaka, there's a balance here that we take care of. The sacred land, the Black Hills, the heart of everything that is. That whole Black Hills is a spirit, sacred place. And yet, I said, the newcomers come here with the paper, with the black book, and made a treaty with us when we are the keepers of this sacred land, the water, the rivers. They made all these laws that they made, all these broken treaties that they made. And now they're even breaking their own treaties, their own law. So today, no, we are faced with a lot of chaos, sickness. I come here too because on a Facebook, He said, my name says net worth 16 million. I'm glad it's not a reward. But no, that's things that we're faced with, a lot of money. It's all about money in this world today. People selling our ceremonies. Where are we standing today? We're supposed to protect the sacred. Stand up and protect the sacred. Because everything that we have is all about spirit. All the rivers, the trees. I say, Wamakashka, the buffalo and the horses. They have feelings. And we talk about boundaries. No, I'm on this ride, the Bigfoot ride. I'm on this ride, the 38 Dakota ride. Talking about the spirit of our animal nation. The horses, the buffaloes. They were almost wiped out to control our people. It's going to a place today where the way things are going is not good. The bundle I take care of is called, I talked about a spirit bundle as a prophecy that someday I shall return and stand upon the earth as white buffalo calf. That was 1994. Almost every year, white buffalo calf, white animal is born. Even though Makashka is telling us that something is not right. They're showing their sacred color is white. That we must stand together today to protect our ceremonies and to protect our sacred land, that the Black Hills is not for sale. What should do? Metakosi. Thank you.
Opilatanka Lexi. Thank you for sharing the wisdom with us and your knowledge. We appreciate everything that you do for the Oyate. Opilatanka. At this time, we're going to call upon Lexi Claude Tuelk, Chairman of the Sichangu Lakota Treaty Council, have some resolutions. Okay.
We're going to present two resolutions for your approval as the Oyate.
because first want to see who's all up. I just was asked to do this for our Sichanghu Treaty Council. We are also host to this treaty meeting. I feel very honored to do this for Oceti Sakowin. In the past, we've passed some resolutions when we had a meeting up in Bismarck at the United Tribes. But today, we feel it very, very critical to have these two resolutions passed. And just by your show of your right hand or your right arm when we're asking you as relatives. Yeah.
There's no objection that they pass.
Okay. So we're going to be asking this group as unanimous consent to support these resolutions. I'd like to have my Tashi, Bill Little Thunder. He's going to read the first one. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Okay, lachti. Yeah. Tajime glatik de la cola. Hoka wianata hemia. Tate chat. My English name is Philip Little Thunder Sr. I have a Oceti Sakowin Oyate resolution number 2023. Title: Manito Wakpala Blue Water Creek Massacre Monument. Description: a resolution to recover remains, artifacts, sacred objects, and developing a memorial for the ancestors that were massacred at Blue Water Creek in present-day Llewellyn, Nebraska, so that they shall never be forgotten. Sponsors: Wakia Chikala Tioshpai. Authors: Harry Little Thunder, Philip Little Thunder, Karen Little Thunder, Paul Harney Soderman. I don't know where I should read all these whereas, but the Oceti Sakowin Oyate traditional Lakota government has been in existence since time immemorial for thousands of years and acts with the powers, territories, and authorities from inherent sovereignty through the Tiwahe, Tioshpai, Oshpai, and Oyate. Whereas the treaty councils were formed by inherent sovereignty and the Itachan to address any and all treaty rights, deprivations, and any issue relating to treaty rights, treaty territories, and inherent sovereignty. And whereas the treaty councils of the Oceti Sakowin Oyate hereby taken action by traditional Omniche protocol of consensus, and whereas the descendants of Sichanghu Chief Little Thunder hereby present said resolution for consideration before the Oceti Sakowin Oyate traditional Lakota government and treaty councils, and whereas in one of many acts of genocide against Plains Indian tribes, the U.S. military led by General William S. Harney committed a massacre against the Sichanghu Lakota leader Wakia Chikala Little Thunder peaceful village under a white flag of truth on September 3rd, 1855 at Manito Wakpala, Blue Water Creek near present-day Llewellyn, Nebraska. 86 Lakota, mostly women, children, and elders, were brutally murdered, and during the massacre, 70 more people were captured and taken to Fort Laramie. Whereas this act of genocide was the result of U.S. military policy informed by the doctrine of discovery. Papal bulls authorized colonial powers to seize lands and subjugate people as long as people on the lands were not Christians. This, along with the fact that General Harney's mentor was General Andrew Jackson, the designer of the Indian Removal Act of 1831, and the deadly journey known as the Trail of Tears after the massacre at Blue Water Creek, General Harney submitted his sanitized report and claimed a great U.S. military victory. Whereas in the Treaty of Fort Laramie, Treaty of 1851, Horse Creek Treaty, Article 6, the parties to the second part of this treaty have selected principals or head chiefs for their respective nations through whom all national business will hereafter be conducted, do hereby bind themselves to sustain said chiefs and their successors during good behavior, whereas descendants of successors call for restorative actions and grant authority to the Oceti Sakowin Treaty Council to work with descendants to assist in these sensitive and important matters. Whereas the Manitowoc-Pala Blue Water Creek Massacre site is within the 1851 Fort Laramie Treaty boundaries and the 1868 Fort Laramie Treaty boundaries north of the Platte River. Whereas in 1855, Manitowoc-Pala Massacre site was abandoned and the remains of the deceased were unclaimed. Little Thunder's Teoshpai formally requests an archaeological survey of the area to recover any human remains at the site. The Teoshpai will work with the Rosebud Sioux THPO office and NAGPRA for respectful historic preservation. Whereas the southern part of Manitowoc-Pala Blue Water Creek Massacre site, also referred to as Little Thunder Sanctuary, features the 300-year-old witness tree that has been documented by the state of Nebraska as the second largest living cottonwood tree in the state. The Little Thunder Teoshpai considers this area to be sacred site, currently owned by Pat Gammett. Whereas 300 artifacts were collected by Lieutenant Warren, deposited at the Smithsonian where they remain today. Recently, a letter was discovered by curator Bill Billick from Joseph Henry, the first president of the Museum of General Sherman, verifying that Warren collection was taken from the Blue Water Massacre. Whereas the recent Department of Interior announcement of the revision of NAGPRA governing the return of Native American ancestral remains and the artifacts to their tribal nations, streamlining the process by imposing a 5-year strict deadline for museums and federal institutions to re-inventory and return Native American human remains and burial objects to their respective tribal nations, specifically in this case to the Sichango Eate Little Thunder Teoshpai. Whereas stated in the New York Times on December 27, 2013, Indian family sees its history in a shirt. In a photo taken of Little Thunder around the 1860, he poses in a leader's shirt with ornamentation revealing that it was one of the handful made for Lakota leaders of that time. On the sleeves are locks of hair given to him by his people or perhaps cut from scalps taken in battle, as well as eagle feathers dyed red and white to symbolize the civil and war responsible of his office. Whereas Charles E. Derby, a collector for the purchase of the shirt, had his lawyer William H. Fry verified that he had purchased the artifact from another collector in the early 1980s and had a bill of sale of Mr. Fry said his client could track the shirt, which has been shown in museums back in 1955 when it was displayed and later sold by a bookstore in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Rampant grave looting led to a series of laws passed in 1906, 1966, 1979, and 1992 that forbid the taking of Native American artifacts from federal land. Whereas in 2013, Karen Little Thunder represented the Little Thunder Teoshpai's pursuit to return the sacred item through adjudication with the legal counsel of the family lawyer Robert Goh, now deceased, successfully in having the shirt belonging to Little Thunder taken off the 2013 Skinner auction. Skinner was told that if the culturally sensitive item known as Chief Little Thunder's leader shirt was not returned to the Little Thunder Teoshpai, the family would, the shirt was not returned to the Little Thunder Teoshpai, the family would ask for help from the United States Department of the Interior, which has jurisdiction over cultural property issues for Native Americans. Whereas the Little Thunder Teoshpai is formally requesting an archaeological survey of the area to recover any human remains from the site. The family will work with the THPO office of Rosebud Sioux Tribe, which I'm an employee of. My boss is here, sitting back here. THPO of Rosebud, South Dakota, to establish an interpretive memorial site and visitor center overlooking Mani Towakpala, Blue Water Creek massacre site. Descendants call for a monument interpretive center and grant authority for the Oceti Sakowin Treaty Council to work with descendants to establish the monument. The monument will be to commemorate and preserve the history. Please see the attached on page 5, the congressional record, which I read yesterday, dated October 2nd, 2008. Therefore, it be resolved, the Oceti Sakowin Oyate Traditional Lakota Government Treaty Council is authorized to assist with the endeavor because the Sichangu Itachan Little Thunder is a member of the Sichangu Lakota Oyate. Therefore, it is resolved of the 5 individual landowners of the massacre site, the Little Thunder Teoshpai request that at a minimum, the southernmost acreage of the Manito Wakpala site currently owned by Mr. Pat Gammett be donated and placed in a land trust. Therefore, be it resolved, the Manito Wakpala massacre has affected the Little Thunder Teoshpai with intergenerational trauma and unresolved historical grief. Although the Teoshpai is not requesting personal financial reparations, they are requesting that any financial reparations be used towards establishing educational programs and support to the homeless housing needs, as well as cultural relevant programs for generations to come. Therefore, be it further resolved that Little Thunder Teoshpai is working with the Ancestral Healing Circle 501c3 nonprofit organization, of which General Harney's descendant, Paul Harney Soderman, Hunka brother to the Little Thunder Teoshpai, is the executive director, which he's watching on the screen now. Therefore, be it resolved that Little Thunder Teoshpai requests that the Sichangu Lakota Treaty Council and THPO work together with the family to return Chief Little Thunder's leader shirt and any other artifacts, remains, and funerary objects in and around the massacre site. Therefore, be it resolved that the chairman of the Sichangu Lakota Treaty Council of the Oceti Sakowin Oyate is hereby authorized to sign this document. And my Tonsi, Claude signed it on the bottom, chairman. Sichangu Lakota Treaty Council of the Oceti Sakowin Oyate is hereby authorized to sign this document and any related documents. Therefore, be it resolved that tribal governments are hereby requested to assist with said resolution. Certification. We, the Oceti Sakowin Oyate, hereby certify that the said document is hereby approved by Traditional Lakota Omniche Protocol of unanimous consent on December, what's today, 14th? 2023 in Rapid City, South Dakota on Oceti Sakowin Oyate Treaty Territory. It was signed at 4:21 p.m. this afternoon, this evening. As I said yesterday, never forget there was a Chief Little Thunder in between Chiefs Conquering Bear and Chief Spotted Tail. There was Chief Little Thunder, and we are the descendants.
Oh. We don't have no objections. We would pass this resolution. resolution passed. Thank you. Yeah, we'll put a check on there. We talk on honey and we show each other and we'll click and learn to organize Ohipi. And Oceti Sakowin, Dona Midaku ki Ohipi na Pijuta wa Luha. He Pijuta ki he a honey Midaku ki hana Maka Kamani. What Hoka will click and Makasa Domina, which Hachbio at and will cook and Titak is on the Chanupa Wakoma or Yuha and I will pick and slowly up below. I thank you for your presence, and I thank you for your support of our family. Grandma Ida Little Thunder gave me life when I was a baby, and I was born in a chicken coop. The only place that was a warm place on April 13th, 1953. And my mom gave birth to me, and my mom's Ida, little son, Grandma Ida, was a midwife. They always say, you know, the relatives that greet you here on this earth, when you come into this world, my relatives are now the chickens. I feel like I want to go after Colonel Sanders. Okay, Crystal Tubles, we have another ask for your support for this next resolution, and she has it.
Crystal, come on up.
Crystal Tubles.
There's going to be a couple of approve it with if you approve it with amendments, because we need to insert the title, description, sponsor, and authors.
Okay. Those things. Yeah. Okay. Read it as is. Okay. A resolution of Oceti Sakowin Treaty Council affirming support for the Palestinian people of Gaza. Whereas the Oceti Sakowin Council is the treaty body of the Oceti Sakowin. Whereas in 1830, Congress passed the Indian Removal Act as a means of claiming and expanding U.S. territory by violently removing Native peoples from our homelands to territories not our own. Whereas this act was designed to cut relationships Native peoples had with the land by removing us, keeping us in prisoner of war camps, destroying our homes, our medicines, our crops, our livestock, and killing any who resisted. Whereas on the other side of the world, our Palestinian relatives in Gaza are resisting similar violence and conditions, albeit under a different timeline of settler colonization. Whereas Israel is now engaged in an ethnic cleansing campaign by first explicitly requiring 2 million Palestinians to leave Gaza immediately, or risk being bombed in their homes, and now are being bombed by the Israeli army. Whereas in 2022, the US committed over $3.3 billion in foreign assistance to Israel. 99.7% of that aid went directly to the Israeli military. Whereas the state of Israel would not be able to maintain an apartheid regime without enormous military aid from the United States every year, thereby also depriving Americans and federal programs of money for their own urgent needs. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Oceti Sakowin Treaty Council urges state and federal representatives to advocate for life-saving fuel, water, food, and supplies to be immediately allowed into Gaza, to stop military aid to the Israeli government, and for an immediate ceasefire and desist all military efforts and stop the occupation and genocide. Be it further resolved that the Oceti Sakowin Treaty Council stands in full solidarity with our Palestinian relatives and full liberation of their homeland. Finally, be it resolved that the Oceti Sakowin Treaty Council advocates for the dignity and safety of residents in every community, regardless of what crimes its leadership may commit, and that peaceful diplomacy is the only way to achieve this safety and dignity.
Okay. I'm going to ask you again for your support with this resolution. I think a lot of us know and seeing what's going on our news channels, and we see both sides. And what I know, it really hits pretty heavy on my heart as I'm a nacha of a Pai Chioshpai, and I'm also our Chioshpai as part of our Oceti Sakowin. We need to feel what our grandfathers and grandmothers, what they went through. And I always share the story when I fasted on the hill with my chanupa. I put myself into the moccasins of our ancestors and what they went through. A lot of trauma. And I cried a lot. Our people. So I ask today, if you have no objections, we're going to go ahead with this resolution. Yeah, don't I will check Hana Ake Aku Amani Panka Hecha Otoya Hana Kakujan Lampetu Okia. We have a question.
Yeah, Steve Newcomb here. I was wondering if it would make some sense to, the latest death toll that I've seen is 17,000 overall, and at least 7,000 children. That might be a little higher than that, but would that make some sense to put that, whatever the latest accurate death toll is in there? Thank you.
With amendment.
Amended, yes, it was amended. Any other objections? Okay. The resolution's passed, and I thank you again.
If I could, is there a way to present this back to our respective tribal councils for that approval also? Do we need to add that into the language of this, or how do you foresee doing that?
I think the same resolution would go before your tribal council.
Okay. So once we get this signed and approved, then get that email to me, and then I'll take it back to Pine Ridge.
Yep, we'll send this one, and we'll send a template too, to personalize it to each nation. Yep.
Oh.
Yeah, Paloma, Palo, Dona Yahipina, yeah. Which also, yeah, I want to thank all of you for your vote, your support of what Tuja is presenting to the Oceti Sakowin. We'd be proud of who you are. We're the Oceti Sakowin. Thank you. We'll let you go.
Mitake, we are coming to the end of our Omanichie, and I want to say Wopila Tanka to each and every one of you. Yohila Wopila Chichapalo. I also want to thank our co-sponsors, Oglala Oyate, Cheyenne River Oyate, Chichango Oyate, International Indian Treaty Council, Sitting Bull College, Standing Rock, Hukpapa Oyate, Chichango Lakota Oyate Treaty Council, and I want to recommend some changes going forward. That the treaty councils are also known as council fires. So we need to start calling them the council fires, because that's the original name of our Omanichie or Kolakichie. I want to especially say thank you to Honor the Earth. They have been a big help for us this year, and they have announced that they will be supporting us again next year, and they've already started the process. So write this date down. December 10, 11, and 12 is the next Oceti Sakowin Oyate Treaty Conference, and we will have a full support for that meeting, and we'll probably really get fancy. Might have some bags and promotional items and foot races. No, just kidding. I also want to say thank you to my friend over here, my executive assistant, Adam Hansen. Wave your hand, Adam. Give him a round of applause for the Wild Foundation, and we would look forward to Wild 12. We will be sending out materials to everybody. We are inviting the treaty councils, tribal governments, native organizations to join us. And right after Rosewood Fair, I think. And remember, my birthday is August 28th. So I want to end the conference with a little giveaway. First, I want to call up the foot soldiers, the ones that have been helping a lot. That'll be Jennifer Martell, Michelle Dog Eyes, and Kashina Thunderhawk, and just Ampo Jensen. Who's the other one? Kashina and who? Byron. Oh, Byron. Byron, could you please come up and stand over here? And let me give them a blanket. We'll give these to the people. These are the helpers that made this happen, made my job a lot easier. And JD Lapointe. Jen, could you take Michelle and JD's? Also, I forgot to thank Justin Puyer Oglala, fifth member, for his help, and also Melvin Miner. And then I want to call my Apaha, Manny Ironhawk. And Wendell Yellowboo and Melvin Miner. These are the Alpahas. I highly recommend them for any of your meetings. They're still in training. We'll fix them up before the next year. Come over here. Later on, we'll be sending out an evaluation on these guys, so you can say whatever you want in that evaluation. and tell us what more training we can get them. Presenters, is there any presenters that are still here? Please come on up. If you did a presentation during the conference, come on up. All you presenters that were on the agenda, come on up and receive a little wopila from us, a little honoring. Really appreciate you. Well, if you want, it's up to you. If you already have one. Jennifer, I can't hear you. Andy. Thank you, Andy. We want to see Andy back. We want to wish him good health for the year too. Oh, Danny Horgan and Vivian. Oh, Vivian already got one. Danny, come on up. Danny is from Missoula, Montana, and he's been taking notes for us for I don't know how many years. A big wopila.
Tashi.
Oh.
Those of you who are here, this is Claude Tualkai. Malakota name is Kokala Hochoka wa Okio money. Let's have a big round of applause for Tashi Phil Tuigo for putting this together for the last 5 years. So I see him as a real helpful Kokala as we go towards the future with our treaties.
How? Next, I'd like to call up the treaty councils, any treaty council members out there. Delano Hiolicha. Delano's trying, he's very modest. So you're not going to. Bill, did you want to come up? Yeah. Claude is the chairman of the Chichahu Council Fire. So kind of help me start calling treaty councils council fires. Jen, come here. Can you help me with this part here? I'm going to have Jen pass out these blankets to some elder ladies. Any other treaty council members? Thank you, Jen. Get one to Faith. Thank you, Faith, for coming every year. I'd like to ask Faith to come up and give us a closing remarks when we get to that point. And the rest, I want to have my help here pass those out to whoever out there. Get one to the IRA councilmen that are here. I want them to support us. Melvin, get those to the tribal council members. So these are the closing ceremonies. Before we go, we're going to have a song, and I want you to have my treaty councils and my Eapaha to stand over here and shake hands with the Oyate. Faith.
Ohami takio yupia kit yushke
na pechius papi. Wana ampetu ihanka heche iushke wana tacha chante nagimi taki wash agia maya. You made my spirit stronger to listen to this old way of talking, because I feel like we're just living in a world of washichu thinking, and it just makes me nahinchia because it's everywhere. So you give me strength, but I want to suggest something that you think about. I fear that a lot of the young people, because they don't hear the language, and we sure don't want to make them ashamed of that, but we want to nurture for them to hear it. So I think we need some teaching between the older ones and the younger ones where we talk like we do here, because they're just not getting it, and it's not their fault. And so when they come into power, Nuni Najipi, they like are lost, and it's very frightening. So I think the respect for elders has eroded. And so I've seen some comments, and I've heard from a lot of elders from all over, even up in Canada. They've asked me to go up and do these circles because they think that we're a burden, and they don't like to listen. So those of you that are in the room, you sat here and you listened and you took that in, but there's a lot of them out there that don't want to listen, and they think the elders are a burden. And so I feel like it doesn't make me chazeka, it makes me nahinchia. So I get panicky that when you hear, like when you hear Claude Shicheshi is talking, you can tell that he's coming from a place of spirit. So the language is codified, and there's deep, deep wisdom. And I just feel like somehow we need to, and I hear a lot of you say, when I go to meetings, I'd sit there as a little boy and a little girl, and I would listen to all those words. There's no opportunity for them to listen that way. And so they act like white people. And like I said, it panics me. So I just feel like if you could put some prayers out, how do we do that? How do we, and then some of them too, you know, when they get, I was in the academic world. I feel like when they go to school, they change. But it's not a bad change because they get really smart. We want them to be Ksapapi, but when I worked with the Colville tribe in the Northwest, they would have me do orientation for them to be Indian again, to be Colville again. And so I feel like there was some young people at one of the meetings that I went to while I was here. And I was just proud of them because what they have done, they've done a leadership in their community. So I went up to them and I said, Takoja, can you piakid yahipi? It's good that you really came. And I wanted to respect them by speaking Dakota. They just sat there and you could see the trauma response. They just sat there and they stared at me. I said, Takoja, Tojanki, Toshkaki, you piakid daku echanopi. And they just sat there and looked at me. I said, give me something back. I just, wakan use up. I'm holding you up. But that's an example of that trauma shock. And I said, you know what? I don't want to scold you, but when I was a little girl, and I would see the grandmas, and they'd say, Ma takoja you pia kid wachianka. And as a child, I would say, Kushi, Unchi. Oh, I'd be like Snoopy. I'd get all excited. But you can see that trauma response in how that language isn't exchanged between the young people and the older people. And us older ones, we have to be really cognizant of not having the language of rage, of saying, what are you doing here? Who'd you come with? It should be more like embracing each other with love. And we can teach that in these meetings. And then some of them, the other thing that I'm worried about is that one of the characteristics that they get when they become overwhelmed in the Washichu world is they don't keep their wochunze. Because a lot of young people ask me for help and I give it willingly
I don't walk fast anymore, and I kind of got checked at Umawani, but I give what I can. But some of them will come to you and they'll want things for you, and then they never come back, and then they don't acknowledge you. They just want to take something from you. And that's not a good trait. So when you make wochunze for little things, it teaches you how to make wochunze for big things. Does that make sense? So that kinship relationship has to be taught when we're in these meetings, because we have nowhere to teach anymore. Like this Koshkanaka, this young man, I really liked the way he carried himself, because he's trying to learn that, how to be a good relative. So I thank you for carrying yourself that way. So I feel I appreciate that, because I saw some. I saw some of it here, the good part. So I just want to thank you for lifting my spirit, and then going back and doing the wokichoza and also the fight at home, because as I stand here before you, my tribe threw me off 3 committees, and they're all young people. And I said, and I wasn't going to fight with them. I just have compassion. And I also tell them, you're not getting rid of me. I'm still going to be there. I might be a little bit slower. The treaty one, they tried to remove me. I said, that one is too far. So I survived. But I think it's their fear of not having wisdom. So we have to figure out, how do we create nonviolent structures so you're not just seeing as an elder who gets free food from the elderly program? Because that's the thing that they're getting indoctrinated from, that those elders are always asking for things. You know, we always have to help them or whatever, but there's really a lot of wisdom sitting in those places where somebody doesn't take them to the store. So I feel like I want to ask for a prayer to strengthen our kinship system. So if you could put that out there, because part of the duty that lies before the young people, in my mind, is you've got to fight for that Missouri River. That's the most important lifeline right now. So I don't get a lot involved over on this side. I know the Chesapa is our sacred place, but ours also is Dote in Minnesota. But the remaining years, I'm going for 100, are going to be on the Missouri River. Everybody's putting straws in there. So in order to make that strength, the elders have to work with the young, and the young have to work for the elders with them. So I just want to leave you with that thought, is that we also have to heal from our trauma and not achnia them, but just work with them. So I just want to say that, because my favorite job in the whole world is being kunshi. And so I want to do that the best that I can. Thank you.
Before we close, I want to make a couple of announcements. This year, we're going to be working on the Pactola Visitor Center. We're calling it Chesapa for now, but that's going to keep us busy. There's 2 more projects that we're going to be going after, and one of them is going to be co-management of Wind Cave. The second one is co-management of Devil's Tower. So those, we're going to be, I received information from the higher ups in Washington, D.C. They are waiting for us. When are the tribes going to propose that? And we're going to be working on that too. So the other one is, I'd like to get Andy's help to work on the Missouri River treaty rights for the Sichanru. And also the Sichanru would ask Andy to look into the Rosebasu tribe versus Kanipe. So these are all very heavy projects that we're going to be working on with all of you. This is all for you. So I would like to ask the treaty councils to come up. I'd like to Kokaki Wichayoni Olonji. I would ask for an honoring song for the treaty councils. If you could, somebody bring some chairs up here so they can sit down. And then as we're singing the honoring song, you could come up and shake hands with our elders. These are our descendants of the chiefs that were at Fort Laramie, and this is who we work for in the traditional Lakota government. And when we go out, we'll be taking our sacred objects out, and then we're going to be, I'm going to ask Bill Means to carry the eagle staff out. Make sure that, I don't want them to fall or anything like that, so we're gonna put some chairs out for them. And so as you look here, we have all of the Oceti Sakowin Treaty Councils. And I need a representative from the Hunkpapa, Kola Lecha Una Lechi Yotako. I want to say thank you to the IRA tribal councils. They are us too, so I'm gonna, as you look up here, all of the council fires are present. That's amazing. Yes. Okay, hey, Apple, come on up and shake hands. Please don't go anywhere. We're gonna have an exit song. Please don't leave us yet. Yep. Dano. Okay, stand in place. We're gonna ask one of our elders for a closing prayer before we go out. Richard. Yeah,
Well, I know we're gonna say the closing prayer. Okay, Ana. Ohina je pelo to na uhipik hena heche. Tukashila. Tukashila kantanka. Onye nishnola. ni wakha. On kanta kutona heche. Wo iwan keki. Na wo abalezeki ha. Wo kakhnege. Ohun keshniki na wakhen jaki. Oyate kelena obwahino jenki. Heche makhavita kele heche tchawe uyakiapi. O helwola kota tona kecha heche yanke. Un kataku tona wola kota yanke kuhena iuha. Oyate ea heche. Meniwancha heha ihujea hinabhapi. Ona lehan hena echa. Yukaki jes e unkua piki hena wana heha lakte. Un ka kantranka. Honi eni waste ki he un hena iche unicha piki. Na unki chich umpie ea heche lena hoechiche. Un ka heche wo itchachan yu hapi ki hoeche. Phil heche na Justin na tona yawa ea pahapi kuhena wo pilat chanka e prekon hena wakant chanka isha wichozane wonia wichak upikte o hunkeshni kuhena o heche uhina jepelo na wakhenja ea o heche wichun hapi ki hena isha heche ogana mani piktelo o aste kina waste hena ogana ksasa o mitaki oyasela o heche wana o maniche kuhe ki ganan ka pikton isam taku wo yustan khesapon yankeki na mani wa yankeki na wo te yankeki na taku heche tushni o ipachia ukuhena a kantranka wo awanke un kupie ya heche le na ichechi chelo na mechi wo heche tuelo ho o hewa.
Okay, so stand fast. I'm gonna ask as the sacred objects come by, the council fire members can walk behind and walk them out. We're exiting and concluding this meeting. This meeting is adjourned.